What's up, everybody? Welcome back inside the Woody Hayes Athletic Center for another practice report presented by Byers Auto. That is Tim May. I am Spencer Holbrook. We are Lettermen Row. Tim,
we are Lettermen Row.
Coming off of the Penn State game, I thought I could start it with that. You know, we are Penn State. We are Lettermen Row. Behind us, the folks in Northwestern claim we are Chicago's Big Ten team. I think 13 other programs beg to differ. But Ohio State Northwestern kickoff at noon on Saturday on ABC.
Noon Eastern time.
11 Central, 11 local time. Our alarms will be going off pretty early to get to the Ryan Field for that one. We'll be there, of course, Tim, but we're going to preview it for now. Ryan Day just spoke to the media, as did Jim Knowles and wide receivers coach Brian Hartline. A lot to learn from those guys, Tim, that talented trio of coaching, and a lot of questions to Ryan Day about not play calling, but offensive philosophy, a little bit of tendencies. I asked him about running out of the pistol, which I know a lot of fans wanted folks to ask about. So, you know, sometimes you oblige because if the fans are curious about it, that means they want to read about it. So I asked about it. A lot to learn, Tim, the bottom line.
I'll let you handle that part.
Go ahead, Tim, your biggest takeaway.
My three biggest takeaways were when he was asked about the availability or the long-term or short-term availability of like May and Williams. Mainly about May and Williams and the injury he suffered falling into that stupid chain gang stake, which wasn't pulled out of the way or at least pulled out of the way in time. Hurt his right arm and stuff. And you know, I think the ice on his knee is more of a thing that they do after every game, because that might have been what kept him out of even making the trip to Michigan State a few weeks ago. But as Ryan Day said, the best thing I can say is it's not serious, meaning the injury, the bump that he suffered there, it was serious enough for them to put his arm in the sling for that second half and him not play anymore. Then another one was when asked whether Ohio State deserves to be in the college football playoff top 4 tonight, when it's revealed the first college football playoff rankings of the year, he goes, absolutely. But that's kind of like saying the sun is hot. Yeah. You know, that's not that profound. But then with Brian Hartline, the wide receivers coach, you know, passing game, helps design the passing game, was asked whether, I'm paraphrasing here, whether we'll see Jackson Smith-Njigba in a significant role again for this offense sometime this year, and what's his level of confidence. He says, I have a huge level of confidence. So, and Ryan Day expressed pretty much the same feelings when he was asked about him, because obviously Ryan Day doesn't, it is getting even more steadfast about not revealing much about injuries, if anything at all, until that availability report is released on Saturday mornings. But I think those are all those two things are about the two players involved, May and Williams and Jackson Smith-Njigba, are encouraging as November rolls on.
Yeah, I agree, Tim. And getting Jackson back would just be icing on the cake at this point. You know, Ryan Day did say that
more like a candle.
He said that he definitely feels confident that they can win a championship without him. They can reach those goals without him, but they really want him back still. That's the bottom line. And then Mayan Williams, I'm not really sure if you can without Mayan Williams because of what he's meant to this running game. When he's been in the game, where he's been changing it up, the pace with TreVeyon Henderson, when both of those guys are running the ball, this offense is better. It just is. And when he's not in there to change the pace up or to deliver a different kind of body blow to a linebacker or a safety trying to tackle him to make those shifty moves, this running game kind of suffers. And so,
let me interject. I'm not interrupting, I'm interjecting. I thought the fact that TreVeyon Henderson answered the bell all day on Saturday, especially after May and Williams went out, was a huge stepping stone for TreVeyon Henderson and this offense. And they finally got the crack they were looking for, and he took it to the house. Go ahead.
I agree. It kind of felt like the Penn State game last year, Tim, where they just kept going at it and kept going at it. And then finally a crease opened, and you saw what TreVeyon Henderson was able to do with a crease.
But that's why you keep going at it and going at it. 1 yard, 2 yards, no yards, and then boom.
So seems like every week, Tim, we've got a little bit of injury news to report, but there wasn't really much to report today. Ryan Day, like you said, keeping it pretty quiet on the injury front, making sure not to reveal much. Would hate for Northwestern to have the upper hand on Saturday.
Yeah.
But you know, if that's the policy, and that's the policy. So beyond the injury stuff, talked to Jim Knowles about JT Tuimoloau's performance, obviously. Got some insight from him from a question that I had asked him about, not asked you, but asked, Tim, about, to Jim Knowles about JT Tuimoloau and his ability to drop into coverage, how much how athletic you have to be able to do that, and how much trust you have to have in defensive ends to play in coverage. Really insightful stuff there from Jim Knowles. Check that out later this week on LettermenRow.com. Yeah. But overall, it just felt like this is a pretty confident football team right now. It feels good about itself, but it's not getting too far ahead of itself. They don't care about the playoff rankings, which I sincerely believe at this point they do not care about what the playoff rankings are.
You know why they don't right now?
Because they don't have a loss.
No, yeah. I mean, if they take care of business, they're in.
Yep, and it doesn't matter.
There's no doubt, whether you're first, second, third, or fourth, they're going to be somewhere in that Final Four if they win out.
Yep.
So it's all about taking care of business. It's all about that next play. It's all about Illinois, a team that couldn't stop at times, Iowa on Saturday.
Northwestern.
Huh?
You said Illinois.
Illinois, yeah, Northwestern. I get those two mixed up. Which one's Chicago's team?
Well, one is at the top of the Big Ten West, and the other one is at the bottom of the Big Ten West.
Yeah, Northwestern, the team that at times had a hard time stopping Iowa's offense on Saturday.
Yeah.
Much less generating their own. You're exactly right. But the keep on keeping on is what this is all about. And here's the thing about JT Tuimoloau. I wrote about him, obviously, earlier this week at LettermenRow.com. But past that, you and I aren't surprised about his athletic ability. This guy had dreams of playing basketball here too.
Yeah.
I mean, he's that kind of athlete. The way he jumped up and grabbed that pass out of midair, that's like him being in the middle of the paint, and intercepting a pass on a basketball field. The way he slow played that one screen to the left and then tipped it into the first big play he made, that went to Marvin Harrison Jr. That's about blocking a pass, as a power forward or something. I mean, everything translates here. His quickness, and the quickness, as you pointed out, almost cornerback-like quickness to come off of his set in that drop back on that zone coverage and come forward and make that diving interception. And it was a great play.
Yeah. Getting on the ball, getting on the floor, getting a loose ball, like a basketball. I mean, Ohio State versus Chaminade tonight.
It all translates, but what's been added, you're exactly right. And I wrote about this. What's been added is a year under Mickey Marotti. And now he is truly a football-looking player out there with still those other skills, and that wasn't the iceberg. That was the tip of the iceberg as far as what we saw on Saturday. Doesn't mean you come up with 4 or 5 ridiculous plays every week, but he is a factor now. Matt Wilhelm and I talk about that on my podcast this week. He is a factor now that opposing offenses have to take into account, along with Tommy Eichenberg and Mike Hall and Steel Chambers. You've got to have this guy in mind on almost any play you design.
Ohio State versus Chaminade tonight in the Schottenstein Center for the first exhibition game of the year. We'll plug that while we're talking about JT Tuimoloau.
Dovetail there.
Potentially, could have played basketball if his team. Chris Holtman did offer him a scholarship. Maybe he'll have to make the jog over to the Schott tonight for that exhibition matchup.
I can see him playing basketball, but that's just me.
I would assume he does it here in the building, Tim, because they've got a basketball floor here. It's incredible, though, when you look at his athleticism, and then you look at Zach Harrison's athleticism when he tracks down Sean Clifford on that 3rd and 8, as JT Tuimoloau actually walks on the practice field now here in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. It's crazy to look at the athleticism of Jack Sawyer, who's a glorified linebacker, defensive end hybrid, only is deployed in certain situations. Zach Harrison, like I said, tracking down Sean Clifford, who's a pretty mobile guy, on a 3rd and 8 and using those massive pterodactyl arms to grab a hold of him and keep him short of the sticks.
Yeah.
JT Tuimoloau out, the athleticism speaks for itself. Watch the film. Tommy Eichenberg and Steel Chambers. Then you factor in Mike Hall at his size being able to move the way he does. Tyleik Williams with that sudden burst off the line of scrimmage. You see that from Teron Vincent. I think, Tim, what I'm saying is this right now, what we're seeing from this team is what separates the great college football teams right now from the elite college football teams right now. Mm-hmm. The guys at Georgia in those trenches, the guys at Alabama, the guys even like Tennessee right now, the guys at Ohio State up front, like Aiden Hutchinson last year that made Michigan what it was. If you have those kind of freaks on the defensive line, and they are freaks, that's what separates you.
Yeah. And
that's what Ohio State has right now with JT Tuimoloau, with Zach Harrison, with Jack Sawyer and those defensive tackles. It's astounding what they've done.
Yeah. And they're coached by one of the great coaches of that position, of that genre that's ever been in Larry Johnson. And guys need to mature at their own rates, but just as outstanding as JT Tuimoloau played on Saturday, Tyleek Williams had his own coming out party for this season. Whatever happened to Tyleek Williams? Well, what happened to him? He made, as JT pointed out when I asked him about him, he made 3 plays that maybe hardly anyone gave much shrift to based on the glare that was coming off of JT Tuimoloau's day. But oh my goodness, I mean, that tackle, that sack, or on that 4th down play, and then of course I brought up with Jim Knowles, two of Penn State's 4 touchdowns came on basically blown opportunities for Ohio State, to make the play.
Yeah.
And you had 2 guys on top of that receiver. Was it Parker Washington who caught the ball in the flat, out in the left flat, and in turn, and 2 guys missed him, and he went to the house on it. They actually ran into each other for the most part. And of course, Tommy Eichenberg on that 4th and goal there in what was the 4th quarter, where he has the ball carrier in the back.
Katron Allen, yeah.
Yeah, and Katron Allen kind of runs through the tackle attempt. And I asked him, because I'm going to write about this week, there are things you can clean up. He said, there's always still a reason to go out and practice, and those are 2 of the reasons. Those are 2 of their 4 touchdowns, that should have been stopped. Had people there to stop them. But I remember this former defensive coordinator here by the name of Gary Blackney, and I've used this quote before on this thing several times, but he said, a coach's job is not to get a player in position to make a play, meaning defensively, is to coach him to make the play.
Yeah.
And of course, that Jim Knowles and his group are going to enforce that part of the tenet this week and stuff, because you can't go back and replay a play, but you can go back and replay in your mind what went wrong there, and this is technically what you did wrong. Don't do it, because all those players know what happened on the play. Now this is how you fix it.
Tim, aside from the defense, which we're going to continue to talk about because it was the story on Saturday, Ohio State's got a pretty good offense to work with as well. Marvin Harrison Jr. is out here catching passes. I know you're all stunned.
I think the whole group was out there a while ago. Maybe they still are.
Yeah, no, it's just Marvin Harrison and Reese Stocksdale and a few other guys.
I think Buka was out there earlier, but go ahead.
These guys work really hard, Tim. Brian Hartline was talking about the work ethic of those guys, being able to point at your peers and say, look at that guy, how he works, go do that. This offense is interesting, Tim. The wide receivers are obviously cooking right now. C.J. Stroud was able to cook in the 4th quarter. What's not cooking very efficiently, I guess, maybe it just looks a little wonky, the running game. And for Trayvon Henderson to get going in the 4th quarter is huge for the confidence of this unit. But there are some things that need cleaned up in the running game. How to pinpoint those exactly, that's why Ryan Day is paid $9 million a year. That's why Kevin Wilson makes his 7 figures, and that's why a lot of those guys in the room are well paid to be able to get those guys ready to do it. And then the guys in the building have those NIL deals and are Division I athletes because they can do it. Now it's just time to go be able to execute in the running game. Northwestern presents Ohio State with a great opportunity to do so. And I'm not taking any credit away from what Penn State did against Ohio State's running game, but there is something that might not need to change for Ohio State, but could be tweaked to get this running game going a little better.
What is it?
Well, like I said, that's for them.
I'm asking you. I mean, you asked Ryan Day that question, kind of give people a little bit of insight of what he said. I mean,
yeah,
he took a little bit of umbrage that the pistol is necessarily when they lap in the pistol, that it's necessarily a tip off of what's coming. I mean, to a certain extent, and because he said they lined up in it.
Well,
5 times, and they were successful 4 in his mind, or 6 times were successful 5. I don't remember the exact number, meaning they got out of it kind of what they were expecting, right on down the line. And just like we were talking about a while ago about those two defensive plays, which accounted for 2 of the touchdowns of Penn State's 4 touchdowns, you can have one guy miss a block, or you can have a running back. All of a sudden, that defender, like I said on our earlier podcast with you, you can have a defender who's not snookered, and he's standing exactly where he's supposed to be. And that's when your running back has to make a play. Yep. And that happened a couple times on Saturday, and that's where Travion and the running backs have to not take ownership of, but use some of that little magic that they've got to then still get positive yardage or big time positive yardage. And there are all kinds of things that can be fixed. You're on any play, it's difficult to block everybody you're supposed to get blocked, basically from one play to the next. But on a consistent basis, it's difficult to run that gamut. And that's what they're going to be working on, though, is trying to get to that excellence in that regard.
So what I asked Ryan Day, and I thought that the wording was fine. I said, Ryan, you guys
Well, don't ever
were
feel bad about a question.
no, I know, but I said, Ryan, you guys were in the pistol and under center 100% of the time. You were in those two formations. You ran the ball. How do you balance doing what you do and doing it well with not tipping your hand on what you're doing? And he said, well, 4 out of the 5 plays we were in pistol were efficient runs. So maybe we just should have ran the ball out of the pistol more. And then he had that little bit of a smile that was like, well, that's your answer for you. And so then he was pressed by a couple others about, formations, tipping hands and stuff. That is a thing, Tim. And he can, it can be remedied if they come out in the first play against Northwestern in the pistol, play action, throw a bomb over the top, and then, shove that in your tendencies. But what I'm saying is, if you're in those two formations and 100% of the time in the game you run the ball, that is showing a tendency. And so I thought it was worth the question. I thought it was just worth it to get Ryan Day's insight and see what he had to say about it. I'm not going to apologize for what I asked. And I thought Ryan Day's answer was just as fair as the question that I did ask. And so
well, no, that wasn't any big confrontation. Let's don't misportray that. But here's the point. What was one of the things he wanted to get fixed on this offense going into this season? You bring in Justin Fry, the new offensive line coach from UCLA. I think his offensive line is playing extremely well. I mean, pass pro, who would you take over this offensive line right now? Tennessee, you could maybe swap them out. Who knows? But the bottom line is playing extremely well. But what's that line you kept hearing? We want to be able to run the ball when the other team knows we're about to run the ball.
Yep.
That's what every offense strives for. And there have been times the last 2 weeks when that hasn't been the case. But those 2 defensive front sevens were pretty damn good too.
Yeah.
I mean, and like I said about being, and what's funny is Penn State's defensive front 7 played the run a hell of a lot better than Penn State secondary in the back, what do you want to call it, the back 7, once pass play is declared, played the pass.
Yeah.
And that's what everybody was concerned about. And even Ohio State, I mean, they saw a talented defensive secondary they were going to be facing going into that game. But when they finally cranked up the downfield passing game, not those, I'm not going to call them stupid, but I do not like those wide screens. I mean, I think they're hit or miss, and a lot more miss than hit. I'm talking about against better defenses because you got quick guys reacting quickly, just like running wide. You got quick guys reacting quickly. That's what I would have changed about their game plan from the get-go on Saturday, if you could let me write it. But the bottom line is they got after it with that passing game, and there's hardly anything more beautiful in college football right now than Ohio State. C.J. Stroud in the shotgun, maybe sometimes at pistol depth, in the shotgun, throwing the ball down the field to Marvin Harrison Jr., Emeka Egbuka, and Julian Fleming, and Cade Stover.
Yeah.
It's almost like if you don't get to the quarterback, somebody's going to get a nice, juicy steak thrown their way.
Yeah, I agree.
Stover meats. Try it.
That's a good plug for Cade Stover.
Stover beef.
I believe Cade Stover's got some T-shirts for sale from Stover Farms right now on his Twitter page too. So, Cade is cashing in on the opportunities that he's been afforded by being good at football.
I'm gonna write about him later in the week. I think I tipped that off a little bit, but
maybe just a little bit, Tim.
But the bottom line is, I think he's been as big a surprise as anybody because in June, nothing was. He's gonna go to tight end. He's gonna play full time at tight end. Blah blah blah. What does that mean?
Yeah.
Is he going to be part of that mix of like, this guy, you could make an argument, this guy is as valuable a tight end as any tight end in the country right now to their offense.
Other than one. Brock Bowers at Georgia. He is their weapon.
But they got a couple of guys down there, that kind of scare you a little bit. Yeah, you're right. But that's why you want to see that matchup. But that's another story for another day, maybe December the 10th or something.
We can hope, because that would be a very fun matchup to cover. You know what might be a fun matchup to cover, Tim? I can't believe I'm going to say this, trying to say it with a straight face. Ohio State Northwestern on Saturday.
I figured we'd get to
noon.
That late in the week.
Yeah, Ohio State Northwestern Saturday at noon in Evanston at Ryan Field, 11 a.m. local time if you're in the Chicago metro area. Tim and I will both be there. It'll be a lot of fun to be there and take in the city for a couple days and also cover some football. So this is a practice report presented by Byers Auto. A lot to cover from Ryan Day, Jim Knowles, and Brian Hartline. Again, that's Tim May, the 40-year veteran. I am just Spencer Holbrook. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Do you want more of our coverage? Go check it out. LettermenRow.com, $1 for an entire year.
$1? Is that all?
Tim, that actually gets you access to the Michigan game, The Big Ten championship, potentially.
Run through the playoffs.
The run through the playoff or bowl assignment, wherever Ohio State may land. Spring practice, in through the Notre Dame game next year, training camp, and then up through October, and gets you right up until next November.
And it gets you into on 3, right? I mean,
absolutely, yeah.
The
whole network.
The NIL valuations, everything that they follow there, in my opinion, keeps getting deeper and better from on 3. And, I think that's a hell of a deal, $1. I mean, that's a Merry Christmas for somebody.
Or a Happy Thanksgiving, however you want to dole out that gift of $1 for an entire year.
Happy Veterans Day.
Happy Veterans Day, $1 for an entire year, Lettermen Row. Go check it out. We're here all year round covering Ohio State. For Tim, I'm Spencer from the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back in here on Wednesday night for another practice report presented by Byers Auto.